heard you were going to be around today. I wanted to talk to you. Meet my associate, Mr. Tabor.
Tabor? Nice to meet you, sir.
Mr. Ward is the federal parole officer in charge of the Vernon Hill matter.
Oh, excuse me, Sam. I have a meeting with Judge Baker.
Right. Good luck.
Well, the board hasn't met yet, so I'm sorry that we can't give you an answer. Hill's record is still under study.
Well, it's been under study for the past 3 months.
Vernon Hill was convicted of armed robbery. He was guilty of being an unruly prisoner at Leavenworth, and he had to be transferred to Alcatraz. Now, believe me, I'd like to help you. I've got my doubts on this one, and I hate to be in doubt.
How can you overlook what Hill has accomplished in the past 12 years? He's educated himself. He's become an electronics expert. He's developed an entirely new system for processing intelligence and vocational guidance tests, something sorely needed in schools, industry, and military organizations throughout the country.
I assure you we're well aware of Mr. Hill's talents. I'm due at the office.
That's all right with me. I can talk anywhere.
If it wasn't for Mr. Hill's talents, we might not even consider probation. He's an angry man. His personality problems are many.
What about the report of a member of your own psychological staff, Miss Jan Fielding? She's visited him a number of times at Alcatraz. She says that he's ready to return to society.
Miss Fielding is not a member of the parole board. And if Vernon Hill steps out into a hostile world that he's not prepared for, the danger could be enormous.
I'm his lawyer, and I can tell you that if the purchase for his new equipment goes through with Weber Electronics Incorporated, Vernon Hill will be stepping into a very happy world indeed.
Frankly, I'm not sure that I want the responsibility of Mr. Hill's future in my hands.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, sir. I'll be glad to give him your message. Right.
Miss Hunter to see Mr. Tabor.
But did you have an appointment?
No.
Oh, just a moment, Miss Hunter. Mr. Tabor, there's a Miss Hunter out here to see you. Yes. Oh, yes, sir. So sorry, Miss Hunter. I didn't realize you were the attorney in the Daily Matter. Will you come in, please?
Thank you.
Good morning, Miss Hunter.
Good morning, Mr. Tabor.
Please come in. I thought I'd see you in court.
Oh, I thought I'd save you the trouble. For your client, Mrs. Daly.
Oh? $1,500. Do you call that a settlement?
A fair settlement, yes.
My client, Miss Hunter, is suing your client for $500,000. We have no intention of settling for less than that amount.
Why don't you ask Mrs. Daly and let her decide?
Mrs. Daly has just been recently widowed. She's in no condition to be bothered by a ridiculous proposal. As a matter of fact, her doctor will not permit her to appear in court. He's a medical doctor, by the way.
I resent that. Walker Smith is an expert on nutrition. He doesn't claim to be anything else.
My client's husband is dead because of him and his nutrition. When I get through with Dr. Walker Smith, he's going to be back running a massage parlor where he belongs. I'm surprised you'd accept representation of an out-and-out quack.
Need I remind you, Mr. Tabor? Anyone and everyone deserves the right to be defended by counsel. Or, didn't they teach you that little fact at San Francisco University?
She's right, Hank.
I know. I'd like you to meet Miss Hunter. Miss Hunter, this is Mr. Benedict.
How do you do?
How do you do, Mr. Benedict? It's a pleasure. I've admired your work.
Thank you. Hank, Doug Ward just phoned. Vernon Hill's boat will be arriving from Alcatraz in a few minutes.
Right. I'll see you in court, Miss Hunter.
In court, Mr. Tabor.
She sounds like she knows what she's doing.
She's a good lawyer.
I wasn't referring to that. She's also a very attractive young woman. Get your coat.
Miss Hunter, perhaps we should discuss this matter further.
A settlement?
Well, I wasn't referring to Daly versus Campbell. The matter I had in mind was dinner.
Oh, that matter.
Hmm.
Well, my calendar's rather full. When did you have in mind?
Tonight?
Tonight. All right. I accept that, Counselor. But I'll still see you in court.
Yes, ma'am.
Goodbye, Miss Hunter. Goodbye.
They're all nose, Trudy.
Right.
Remember, the odds are against you when you argue with a lawyer who wears nylon stockings.
Is that the launch?
Yeah. Your shoes a little stiff? Yeah. Meet my associate, Henry Tabor.
I'm very glad to meet you, Mr. Hill.
Same here. Let's get out of here.
Years I've been in that lousy cage, and they've been flying around free. All right, let's go pick up my $1 million.
Well, there it is. Is it all here, Vern?
Oh, I hope so. Sam?
Hello, Ben.
Mr. Tabor.
Mr. Weber.
Mr. Hill,
Mr. Weber, hello.
well, there's your equipment. We're having it hooked up according to your plans.
Good. I'd like to have a partition built right here. You see, so that the computer is separated. We'll put tables over there for the people taking the tests. Of course, when we manufacture this commercially, we'll have these mounted on trailers, but for this test, I'd like to have perfect conditions. I don't want the people taking the tests interfered with by the computers.
I see. Will you excuse me?
Well, he doesn't seem to show very much enthusiasm.
He's investing $50,000 in this invention of yours. That's a lot of enthusiasm.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Miss Fielding. You know my associate, Hank Tabor?
How do you do?
Hello, Mr. Tabor.
Miss Fielding is a young lady who helps with the vocational guidance tests at federal prisons.
I have the first copies of the basic tests.
Good. May I see them? Thank you.
Well, I hope you people realize what a job Miss Fielding has done the past few days getting this equipment ready.
Thank you, Mr. Weber.
I'm sure Vern appreciates it.
We'll need soundproofing on this side of the room.
Make a list of what you need. We'll get it for you. Could you give us an idea of how this operation functions?
I'm sorry, Ben, but Vern has got to check with the federal parole office before he goes back to work. Perhaps Miss Fielding can give us a general idea of how the system works.
Of course, if Mr. Hill doesn't mind.
No, it's okay. You check everything out, and I'll be ready to work in the morning. See you in the morning, Mr. Weber.
All right.
Wait a minute, Mr. Hill. I'll drive you over. I'm due in court.
Vern?
You'll have to wait over there. I can't get a table for you for at least 20 minutes.
Darling, what's wrong?
Listen, take the afternoon off, spend it with me, will you?
Sure.
Very well, Mr. Tabor, continue.
Your Honor, we are asking $500,000 damages for the wrongful death of the plaintiff's husband, Homer M. Daly. I am applying for a court order compelling Elizabeth G. Campbell to answer questions put to her in my office at 333 Montgomery Street, October 3rd last, when we were taking her deposition.
Is Mrs. Campbell represented by counsel?
Your Honor, I am the attorney for Mrs. Campbell and also the attorney of record for the defendant in the case, Dr. Walker Smith.
Is that Mrs. Campbell beside you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mrs. Campbell, did you on October 3rd last in Mr. Tabor's office at 333 Montgomery Street, San Francisco, California, refuse to answer the following questions? 1, are you a patient of the defendant, Walker Smith? 2, what diagnosis has he made of your illness? 3, what treatment has he administered? 4, what medication has he prescribed? 5, what fees has he charged and how much have you paid him to date? 6, did Walker Smith promise to cure you of cancer? And 7, did you ever hear Walker Smith promise to cure anyone of cancer?
I certainly did refuse to answer those questions. And I want to tell you...
It was on advice of counsel, Your Honor. We contend that these questions have no bearing on Daly versus Smith.
Your Honor, my client is claiming damages on the grounds that Walker Smith fraudulently promised to cure her husband of cancer, administered treatment, prescribed medication, and gave advice which caused him to postpone a surgical operation which a doctor of medicine stated would save his life. In trial, we will prove this allegation with a dying declaration made by Homer M. Daly.
Your Honor, counsel certainly must realize that a dying declaration cannot be admissible as evidence in a civil action.
I hope counsel is not attempting to make decisions for Your Honor.
Most certainly not, Mr. Tabor. That dying declaration was presented to the district attorney, and despite the fact that such statement may be admissible in a criminal action, the district attorney felt that the statement was made in a moment of delirium. Therefore, no action was taken against Dr. Smith.
Your Honor, the purpose in questioning Elizabeth Campbell and a number of other patients of Walker Smith is to discover whether the treatment he administered to Homer Daly and the advice he gave was part of a consistent scheme and pattern of fraudulent medical practice.
Your Honor, the issue in this case is not what Dr. Smith promised to other persons, but what he promised only to Homer M. Daly. However, I might point out that Dr. Smith is prepared to testify that he never gave advice, diagnosis, treatment, or promise of cure to anybody, particularly to Homer M. Daly. Dr. Smith is merely a counselor on diet and nutrition.
Your Honor, it isn't important now what Walker Smith will testify to. We are here in a discovery process.
Mr. Tabor, has the grand jury gone into the question of whether Dr. Smith is practicing medicine without a license?
It has, Your Honor, and so have the police, and they have found no evidence on which to take any action.
Even so, the plaintiff is entitled to employ the discovery procedure. The pattern of fraudulent treatment does exist, and it may very well be relevant and admissible in this case. Mrs. Campbell, you are directed to answer the questions which I have just read to you. And pursuant to the law in matters such as this, you will pay to the plaintiff the sum of $100, which sum will be deemed to cover the cost of making this motion.
Me? I have to pay?
Shh,
Mrs. Campbell, please.
Don't shush me. I won't do any such thing. Do you hear me? I won't answer any questions, and I won't pay a cent.
Mrs. Campbell, I must warn you that the law specifies...
I don't care about your old law or what it specifies. This man delivered me from the darkness of despair.
Mrs. Campbell, please.
He delivered me from pain. He gave me courage and hope. Man often dreams and speaks of happier days in store. And toward the ideal goal they grope and dream and hope the more. The world grows old and young again, and man goes hoping free of pain.
Miss Hunter, you will take charge of your client. A bailiff will restore order in this court.
Hope is a witness. Hope is a witness at our birth. It flutters round our early years.
Miss Campbell, you are in contempt.
Its magic clothes our youth in mirth and quiets graybeards' aging tears.
Mrs. Campbell, I order you to stop this disturbance.
Hope above the memorial stone. It is no vain, deluding thought.
Mrs. Campbell, once and for all, I order you to be quiet.
I appreciate your loyalty. We must respect the dignity of the court.
I was just trying to show you what beautiful thoughts this man has given me.
Mrs. Campbell, you are an elderly person and apparently not in the best of health. I am now giving you one more chance to proceed to Mr. Tabor's office, answer the questions as ordered, and further to pay the costs as directed by this court.
It is no vain, deluding thought, which from disordered fancy springs. By hope, our hearts are plainly taught that we were born for better things.
Miss Hunter, your client leaves me no choice. Mrs. Campbell, you will step forward and face the bench.
You can put me in jail, but I won't answer any questions. You're all alike, you and the doctors, trying to put me in my grave before my time.
Mrs. Campbell, I will not tolerate defiance from anyone, no matter what the circumstances. I find you in contempt in that you have caused a breach of the peace directly tending to interrupt these proceedings. And further, that in the presence of this court, you have committed willful disobedience of its lawful orders. I now remand you to the sheriff of the city and county of San Francisco to be confined in the county jail until such time as you notify the sheriff that you are willing to comply with my orders.
Wait till you know pain and fear. You'll get down on your knees and pray for someone like Dr. Smith to help you.
How'd it go at the parole office?
Well, he said, Mr. Hill, you've read your parole agreement. Anything you don't understand? I said, no, sir. You'll submit a report to me once a month? Yes, sir. And then he said, no possession, use of, traffic in narcotic drugs. I said, yes, sir. You shall not possess, own, have, use, sell firearms or deadly weapons? I said, yes, sir. Then he said, your chances seem pretty good. However, in case things don't work out, remember that you can get help from this office. Meal tickets, even bed tickets. So don't come around here with any hard luck stories. I said, yes, sir. Or then he said, thou shalt not have alcohol or liquor to excess. And I said, yes, sir. Jan, darling, thanks.
Come in, come in. Hello, Miss Fielding. Vern.
I hope you don't mind my bringing Miss Fielding.
No, not at all. Make yourselves comfortable. Here are rough draft copies of the contracts.
Any news of the patent search?
No, not yet. But don't worry. Patents always take time. Excuse me a minute. Trudy, call Washington and see if Joe Sheldon has anything on the patents.
I certainly will. First chance I get.
Sharing responsibility for the legal tangle as attorney for the plaintiff, Henry Tabor, 333 Montgomery Street, who felt the full lash of Mrs. Campbell's tongue in the courtroom before she was marched off to jail.
What this reporter seems to forget is I'm trying to obtain security for a widow and 3 children.
Quacks. It's a wonder they don't kill more people than they do.
Another night in jail and Mrs. Campbell will acquire some respect for judicial process. Then we'll show exactly what Dr. Walker Smith purveys.
I wouldn't count on it. You've already subpoenaed other patients of Walker Smith, haven't you? Forget Mrs. Campbell. Work on the others.
From Mr. Sheldon.
Thank you. I see you've read the employment contracts.
I thought I had you pegged, Sam Benedict, the master. Yes, sir. After meeting you and considering your illustrious career, I said to myself, there's a man you can trust.
Vern, give Mr. Benedict a chance.
Style, that's what he's got an understanding, too. He really cares about rehabilitation of criminals.
Vern, before you get
Oh,
yourself
you did a fine job on 3874AZ, yes. The snow is still in my eyes and it's cold, believe me.
Vern, now let me explain.
We had a firm commitment with Weber. I was to be an officer in that corporation, an officer, not a flunky that punches a time clock.
I know that. However, the facts are as...
Here comes the rules again, the rules. Yes, I know. My civil rights have been suspended. I'm not to marry or engage in business.
Look, you, take it easy.
I'm not supposed to sign certain contracts without the approval of my parole officer. Well, I've got the approval of my parole officer, and I want Weber to stick to his word.
Mr. Weber wants to keep his word, and would if he could, believe me. Now, hear me out. If you will read page 1 of this contract, you will see that the party of the first part is not Mr. Weber, but Weber Industries, a California corporation with a board of trustees responsible to several hundred stockholders.
You ever hear anything like that? Now he's giving me the legal double talk.
You can't blame Mr. Benedict.
What do you want me to do? Let him cut my fingers and my toes, too?
Or maybe we just better put this all aside and give it a little more thought.
No, I think we should try to understand each other now. Believe me, I want you to succeed. I want you to prosper.
Yes, but you have the responsibility of protecting Weber Industries from a man who's been convicted of armed robbery, right?
Mr. Weber's only requirement, and it's spelled right out there in those contracts, is that you prove yourself for 1 year before you become a voting member of the board with the right to determine fiscal policies.
Vern, that's not too unreasonable.
Look, I don't need the corporation. The corporation needs me. I'm the guy who's going to own the patent, remember?
That may not be so easy. We just heard from Joe Sheldon in Washington. He says that your system as such may not be patentable.
It's going to be a grand and glorious morning.
Darling, we'll try to work it out.
We will work it out, believe me. As inventor of the system, I'll see that you get your royalties, patents or no patents.
Oh, you know how to hand it out beautifully, Sam. A stocking full of stale candy to an orphan on Christmas.
Vern.
Every stinking lousy notion, every plan, every movement I intended when I hit the street has been chopped into splinters. I should have stayed where I was. I'm a con, and I got no right to be anything but a con. You gonna make me pick it up, Sam? How about that? You gonna straighten me out, counselor?
Look, you, I don't push easy. Remember that.
The system is mine. I want the contract my way.
I'll talk to him. Vern.
Hold the line just a minute, please. Garfield 10713. Oh, Mr. Benedict hasn't come back yet. Yes, I will. I'll tell him. Mr. Tabor is busy. Ladies, please, he's busy taking a deposition. I can't disturb him now.
Mrs. Hart, would you please answer the question? Do you know Walker Smith?
I know a Dr. Walker Smith.
Are you a patient of his?
Mrs. Hart, please, you are required to answer these questions. I don't know what he means, am I a patient?
Did you ever consult Walker Smith about your illness?
I discussed it with him.
Did he prescribe any medication for you? Do you refuse to answer?
I don't understand the question.
You know what a pill is, don't you?
Yes.
Did Walker Smith ever give you any pills, sell you any, or write out any kind of prescription for them? I don't wish to threaten your client, but I suggest you explain the law.
Mrs. Hart, you must answer these questions or you will be held in contempt of court. For that, you may be fined or go to jail. Well, if that's the way it is, that's the way it'll have to be.
What is this, a conspiracy?
I have no knowledge of any such thing.
Very well. Mr. Reporter, let the record show the witness refused to answer. I asked you to cite her on contempt. Will you stipulate the witness was cited pursuant to Section 1991 of the Code of Civil Procedure?
Yes.
Then that's all.
You can go now, Mrs. Hart. I'll see you shortly.
Trudy, send in Mrs. Shanagan.
Oh, Mr. Tabor, Judge Doyle's secretary asked if you'd call her the minute the deposition was over.
Thanks.
Hank, don't forget, we're willing to settle.
Mrs. Daly, isn't that for only $1,500?
Well, maybe I could lift it to $4,000 or $5,000.
We want $500,000. Hello, this is Henry Tabor. What? Mrs. Campbell has gone on a hunger strike.
A hunger strike?
Yes, Miss Hunter's right here. Wait a minute, I'll see. Judge Doyle has ordered Mrs. Campbell brought back into court. He's going to give her a chance to reconsider.
When?
4 o'clock.
What about the depositions?
I'll postpone them. Tell Judge Doyle we'll be right there. That's all for today. Let's go. Trudy, I'll be in Judge Doyle's court. If Mr. Benedict calls, tell him I'm over there.
Yes, sir.
Sam, go ahead. I'll meet you over there. Sam, I need your advice.
Garfield 10713.
Ah. What's your problem?
Just a moment.
Well?
It's for you, Mr. Tabor.
Hello? Yes, this is Mr. Tabor.
Nothing from Vern Hill or Miss Fielding?
No, sir.
Well, keep trying.
Who is this? She's not a helpless old lady. She's a fanatic, and I'm not married. Says he knows where my wife shops, and if I care about her welfare, I better get off the case.
Nice fellow.
Look, Smith made us an offer, $5,000. Think we ought to take it?
Sure. If you consider that adequate compensation for a man who is making $20,000 a year. You keep trying Miss Fielding. I'll try Vern Hill.
Vern, I have to talk to you.
Beat it.
Vern, please.
Don't ask me to be reasonable. That invention was my baby, and I want that contract to read my way.
Your baby?
All right, you helped.
Vern, listen to me. We worked together for 5 years. We waited, we hoped. Well, you can't just destroy all that because of a few clauses in a contract. It's not just the contract, is it? There's something else.
boss, will you? Let me stand on my own 2 feet.
Vern!
I said get low. Jan. Jan, I'm sorry.
Are you?
Here.
Never mind. Go ahead, say it. Say what you're thinking. It wasn't true. All those pretty words and those letters, none of it true. You never were in love with me, not for a second.
I thought I was. Look, I really thought I was. Jan, I'm as disappointed about it as you are, so help me.
Are you?
Yes, I am. I care for you. Jan, I really care, but it just isn't love. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm sorry.
Before we begin, I will remind those present that I will tolerate no outbursts or demonstrations of any kind. Have Mrs. Campbell brought in. Mrs. Campbell? Oh, it's all right, Miss Hunter. The defendant may remain seated.
I prefer to stand.
Mrs. Campbell, I have ordered you back for the purpose of giving you another opportunity to obey the lawful instructions of this court.
I have been in your jail 2 days. My body may be weaker, but my spirit grows stronger by the hour. I know what I'm doing is right.
Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Tabor.
We believe more strongly than ever in the justice of our case. However, Mrs. Daly doesn't wish to subject any human being to suffering and misery. We therefore move to dismiss this witness on the condition that her suffering and illness be verified by a medical authority appointed by the court.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Tabor, the court was going to order such an examination on its own motion. However, since you have anticipated me, the motion is granted. Sheriff will transport the witness to the county hospital for a complete physical examination, the results of which will be reported to me. This case stands continued.
I won't submit to any examination.
I'm sorry, you have no choice.
I absolutely refuse.
Sit down and be quiet. My dear. Just a moment, please. Mrs. Campbell would like to consult with her attorney. Elizabeth, dear, Miss Hunter insists that you submit to the examination. She says if you don't, it will be a demonstration of bad faith, and she will be forced to withdraw from the case. So we're going to ask you to go through with it. Miss Hunter will be right there with you and will not permit any treatment against your wishes. Huh? All right, Deputy.
Mrs. Campbell, I'm from the San Francisco...
Dr. Smith, would you be willing to make a statement?
Boys, Mrs. Campbell is very tired. We can't allow any interviews. I'm sorry.
Hey, how about it, Doctor? Is she going to submit to that examination?
Certainly. She has nothing to conceal.
Then why does she persist in defying the court?
As I stated before, I'm sure she realizes nothing she could say would cause me any harm. You see, Mrs. Campbell and other people who come to me for friendship have what you might call an emotional need to show appreciation far beyond what the rest of us experience.
Mrs. Campbell, for instance, had been to a number of medical doctors. They had exhausted her savings and given her nothing but despair.
And you promised to cure her with diet supplements and double talk.
I have never promised to cure anyone.
Did you tell her what you told Mr. Daly, not to submit to surgery?
I told Mrs. Campbell what I told Mr. Daly, that my studies of the medical statistics demonstrated that attempts to cure cancer by surgery fail as often as they succeed. I said that Mrs. Campbell would have to make up her own mind, as Mr. Daly made up his mind. In the event she decided against surgery, I would be glad to offer whatever help I could.
You know the fine points of the law. I'll say that for you.
Law? You mean that system wherein a medical doctor is given the privilege of losing a patient without being blamed for it? But according to which, for a similar failure, I am branded a charlatan.
Don't tell us you're bothered by criticism. Bad publicity is better than no publicity at all, isn't it? This stunt with Mrs. Campbell and the others, and there will be others, gentlemen. These women here defying the court and joining Mrs. Campbell in a hunger strike. This publicity's worth thousands of dollars, isn't it? Of course, most of us will be appalled at the exploitation of the ill and the dying, but there will be those of us who are in desperate straits, those of us who've been told we cannot be cured of cancer, and those like Mr. Daly who are afraid to submit to surgery. They'll come flocking to your clinic by the busload. Too bad Mr. Daly had to die, but c'est la guerre.
I resent this, Mr. Tabor.
You haven't begun to resent it. Did you ever hear the old saying, ladies? In this world, there are two kinds of people, them what gets and them what gets took.
Sincerely, blah, 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 that's it. Try the police again and try Doug Ward.
Yes, sir.
Hello? Jan, I've been trying to reach you. What? Are you all right? I'll be right there. Call Doug Ward's office. Leave a message. Tell him to meet me right away at Jan Fielding's apartment and tell him it's urgent.
It was terrible. Horrible. The things he said. The things he did.
It's going to be all right, Jan. Come on, get a hold of yourself. Come on now. Sit down. Tell me all about it.
He's vicious. It's as simple as that. The psychiatrist's term for it is hostile. Well, I'm not interested in what the psychiatrists say, Mr. Benedict. Vern Hill is a brute. A mean, angry brute.
Come on, take it easy, Jan. Tell me the whole story.
Can't you just see by looking at me? He beat me, Mr. Benedict. He beat me. On the street. In front of a restaurant. He's a vicious, cruel, hostile man. Look at my face. I mean, I tried to explain, to reason to him. And you know what I got for my trouble, my sympathy? His fist, Mr. Benedict. Right in my face.
Vern Hill did this?
Yes, Vern Hill. The model parolee with the bright prospects. Well, we just didn't know what we were dealing with.
I want to reach Douglas Ward, Federal Parole Office, San Francisco. I don't care how busy he is. I want to talk to him.
Well, Sam Benedict. When did you join the rescue squad?
Hello, Sam.
All right.
Miss Fielding, my name is Ward. Mr. Hill's parole officer.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Ward.
All right. Now, the complaint is that you struck Miss Fielding.
I shoved her to make her let go of my arm. She was wearing those high-heeled shoes. She tripped. I did not hit her.
I wasn't wearing high-heel shoes.
Jan,
I was trying to talk some sense into you, and you turned on me suddenly. That was horrible. The fists, the blows, the panic.
Jan, you don't know what you're doing to me.
I can't help it. I mean, I just can't keep it a secret and let this happen to somebody else. Maybe worse.
All right, you asked for it. Mr. Ward, would you please tell them how many complaints against parolees come from angry women?
Happens every day.
Including today.
You're saying that Jan is distorting the facts out of vindictiveness?
Yes, I am. When I was in prison, I thought I loved her. Then I found out that I didn't. Well, that's the way it is. When I told her that in front of the restaurant, well, she told you that story.
I wish that were true. I wish I could help you, Vern.
What? You believe her, I can see that.
What did you expect after the way you behaved in my office this morning?
Well, I lost my... Look, I lost my temper. Is that a felony?
You threw your weight around. You flexed a lot of muscle.
Is that true?
Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Benedict. All right. You're all right, and I'm wrong, okay? I know that I'm different from you. I learned that in group therapy. Rehabilitation, they call it. Oh, it's great stuff. Makes you look deep inside into your past. Find out what makes you a criminal, what makes you hostile, angry. The image, they call it, Sam.
What image? What are you talking about?
The image of what you really are deep inside. An ugly, squat toad. That's what keeps prodding you on. Makes you a criminal. Makes you act tough, push people around. That's what you try to forget.
Fine, come on, take it.
No. Let me speak out my hostility. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm speaking it out.
All right, go ahead. Talk about it.
All right. I changed that image. I built that toad into an inventor. An organizer of psychological tests. A man worthy of friendship and, yes, admiration. Well, the gates opened and out I went. The rebuilt Vern Hill. With my new skills, my new character, my new confidence, and what happened?
Vern, what I told you in my office this morning was inevitable. You have an inflated idea of this invention of yours and of how important it is and how speedily it can be marketed. Your dreams are as unreal as this image you have of yourself.
You spend 12 stinking, lousy years in that joint and see what kind of dreams you have.
Who asked you to be a criminal in the first place? Who asked you to take a gun and hold up a store and threaten people and hurt them? Not anyone in this room or anyone on earth. So don't blame Mr. Ward or Mr. Benedict or me, because you got what you deserved.
Jan, the truth.
Of course the truth.
This man is trying to pull himself out of a very deep hole. All that he asks is that you don't kick dirt in his face.
Mr. Benedict, he hurt me.
Is that why you want him back in prison?
No. I just don't think he's ready for parole. I think he needs a little more counseling, a little more group therapy, a little more time.
A little more time. You still take her word against mine, huh?
Should I?
Of course.
Are you sure?
Of course I'm sure.
Jan, do you know what comes next? The investigation by the police, the parole officer, and maybe me?
You?
Yes, I'd hate to have to cross-examine you, Jan. It's a terrible ordeal. You mentioned shoes. I hope nobody in that bar saw you wearing high-heeled shoes or overheard your conversation. You know, Jan, a lot of bartenders, they pretend to hear nothing. Others are regular busybodies. That busybody, that bartender, they'll be there in court, and so will a couple of witnesses. Somebody just driving by in a car, somebody you saw everything from a window across the street. And why didn't you run back into that restaurant?
What?
When Vern hit you or grabbed you by the arm, and which hand did he use? And incidentally, why didn't you scream or yell for help? Why?
I couldn't.
Why?
All right. All right, I lied. I don't know, it just started pouring out of me and I just couldn't help it. Unloading hostilities. I have a trunk full. Vern isn't the only prisoner, Mr. Benedict. Alcatraz isn't the only prison. Look around. Shackles, leg irons. 16 years of my darling mother ill and dying. Dreams? What do you know about dreams? Well, gentlemen of the jury, for a girl to throw herself at a convict, she must have had dreams. And she must have been very desperate. Now you tell me, who's the toad?
Mr. Benedict. Oh, Vern. You're clear. Doug Ward phoned this morning.
Then it's okay, the deal.
If you want to sign the contract, I can't make that choice for you.
I want to sign it. I want to get to work.
Come on in.
Judge Tower wants to know if he can borrow your fishing rod.
Tell him it's broken. Go on into my office, Vern. Tell this guy I'd like to, but it's against the law. Next week.
Morning, Sam.
Oh, morning.
Take a look at this. The report on Mrs. Campbell. She doesn't have cancer at all. Never has had. She has what is called irritable gallbladder. And take a look at that note at the bottom. Aggravated by an excess of fat in the diet. I had that diet supplement of Walker Smith's analyzed. It's loaded with fat.
Nice work, Hank.
Well, this time nobody will have any sympathy for her, and if she doesn't answer my question, she goes back to jail.
I don't think that'll be necessary.
Mr. Tabor, I want to talk to you.
Good morning, Mrs. Campbell.
You're a clever young man, Mr. Tabor.
Now, Mrs. Campbell, I only did what I thought was right.
Never mind what you thought. What I'm concerned about now is damages.
Damages?
I want you to institute proceedings against that man.
What man, Mrs. Campbell?
Walker Smith, of course. That thief who sold me that medicine. He's a quack. Malignancy, indeed. $1,234 he charged me. I want every cent of it back. Just put me on the stand.
Please, step into my office, Mrs. Campbell.
Deceitful heathen, flee the land, and take thine evil potions hence. Thou shrewd of tongue and false of hand, whose words betray...
In my office, Mrs. Campbell?
Whose words betray our innocence. For we thy bicker shall destroy, and turn the hound upon the heath. Oh, slay the heathen, bring forth the blade that slew the dragon from the devil's lair. And Lucifer himself shall...
You know, Vern, after you've been out here for a while among us normal people, you may long for the peace and quiet of Alcatraz.